So, this is a very special episode, and not just because Donald Trump is the new president-elect. It's a special episode because I had pretty much hedged my bets on the corporate queen being the president-elect, and that is not the case. So, today, without any script, because I didn't have time to write one, and having to scrap the former episode, I'm just going to be looking at some notes, and maybe periodically crying, but here is the breakdown of today's episode. The nitty-gritty numbers, basically what happened as of this morning, November 9th. The blame game, who's to blame, because that is important and also kind of fun. What do the numbers mean? Ballot initiatives, and what now? So, from the very impromptu home of Act Out, literally my home, we're going to break this down for you guys in this new world order. So first of all, the nitty-gritty. Clinton becomes the 5th presidential candidate to win the popular vote while losing the electoral vote. The total as of this morning, again, was 276 electoral votes to Trump, 218 to Clinton. Clinton winning the popular vote at 59,204,408, and Trump winning at 59,058,307. And that the Washington Post said at 11:51 p.m., I was unable to find more recent numbers, but that Johnson and Stein, the third-party candidates, came to a 4% combined final result of the election results, and those are still being counted, of course, so that might change by the time you watch this. Republicans retained control of the House and the Senate, and they also have the most number of governorships that they've had since 1922, and we'll get into what the hell that's all about in a bit. They flipped Missouri, Vermont, and New Hampshire. The Democrats outspent the Republicans by $2.5 million on governor races and by over $172 million in the presidential elections. Clinton ran 3 times more ads than Trump did. Republicans did outspend the Democrats in the House and Senate races, which again went to the Republicans. So, on to the blame game. I know that as we wake up this morning with a horrendous hangover and the what the fuck question poised on everyone's lips, we just want to know whose fault it is. How did we get here? How in 2016 did we elect a neo-fascist for president who arguably doesn't even want to be president? Well, here's what's going to be popular. Third parties. Just like in 2000. It's the third party's fault. Anybody that voted for Johnson or Stein essentially voted for Trump. Well, the numbers are still coming in, but I can already tell you that that's bullshit. And here's how I know. Again, with the 4% combined, there's no way that Johnson or Stein could have taken enough votes from Clinton to win. The other issue, as was in 2000, how do you know that those votes would have been for Clinton? In 2000, the case was clear that a lot of people that were voting for, that voted for Nader would have voted for Bush. Or that a lot of people that would have voted for Gore didn't even show up. Basically, Democrats didn't go to the polls. So, in terms of the blame game, let's start with the DNC. The DNC clearly showed in its rigged primaries that it was more interested in defeating populist Bernie Sanders than it was in defeating Trump. They literally added white noise to Clinton's rallies to make it sound that like she was more popular than she was. And in that same vein, the Democratic Party has moved right. The Democratic Party doesn't stand for nothing. It stands for what the Republicans would stand for if they hadn't really gone off the deep end. Educated liberals have overseen the greatest rise in income inequality since the Gilded Age. That is on the Democratic Party. They don't represent the people, and that has been excruciatingly clear in how many people didn't vote for Clinton in both the primaries and last night. And I'll get to the issue of voting for the status quo when we talk about the numbers game. But Clinton just represented more of the same. more of the same shift to the right that Obama has represented in his last 8 years of office. And people were not swayed by that more of the same argument. Clinton underperformed with millennials and minorities. Just let that sink in for a second. Trump won by almost 40 points with blue-collar whites and won the white college-educated voter by 4%. That's indicative of a party that does not stand for what the people are looking for. Also on the blame game list, mainstream media. Thank you. You must be so proud of yourselves for literally showing the empty stage before a Trump speech and, no pun intended, trumping him up with even bad press that you should know by now. There's no such thing as bad press. Mentioning his name constantly while letting third-party candidates or even Bernie Sanders fall by the wayside in your recognition of candidates is on you. Of course, that adds to the idea of fear-mongering. This idea that the alt-right is an acceptable conversation, the white supremacists are an acceptable conversation, is also a big deal, but the fear-mongering, the fact that we're all gonna die because terrorists, or, well, mostly that. And with this idea of the white supremacist conversation, the alt-right, and I mentioned this in an earlier episode, and that segment has now gotten over 4,000 views, which is kind of unusual for us on YouTube, with plenty of comments from white supremacists themselves, calling me a self-hating white bitch, etc., etc. But this is indicative of what the mainstream media has done. It's brought these alt-righters, these white supremacists, to the fore by giving them a platform, by saying that, oh, your comments are acceptable now. This is an acceptable platform for us to talk about white supremacy, when in reality, it's fucking not. And it shouldn't be, particularly in 2016. So, mainstream media, congratulations on helping to ring in a neo-fascist as president-elect. And then, of course, voter suppression. If you haven't seen Greg Palast's latest film, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, I highly recommend that you watch it, because it talks about this issue of voter suppression. Trump was right when he said the elections would be rigged, but not really at all in the way that he said. Voter fraud is not a thing. In fact, you might find this interesting, there were 3 or 4 cases noted last night, and all of them were by Trump supporters, one of whom said he was just trying to test the system. Well, congratulations, you did. Voter suppression is promoted under the guise of primarily of stopping people from voting twice, which is not even a fucking thing, because as we know in this country, most people don't even vote once. But it's been introduced with things like interstate cross-check, which is now a thing in 30 states, which is basically supposedly supposed to stop people from registering to vote under the same name or social security number in more than one state. There's only one problem, that they don't look at social security numbers. They don't even look at middle names, or juniors or seniors or the third, or etc. Again, as Greg Palast mentions in his film and in articles, there are people with totally different middle names that live obviously in different states, but a junior versus a senior, a third versus just a guy. They don't care. The idea is to strike people from the voter rolls that have Hispanic last names or predominantly black names, such as Jackson. So there's one for the blame game for you. Another one being the faulty machines. We have no idea what was lost to faulty machines. This might be another reason that I can't find proper numbers on what Jill Stein or Gary Johnson got. Who knows? If Clinton and her team and the DNC were able to rig elections in the primary, who's to say that they didn't in the presidential election? Even though Clinton lost, the idea of rigging machines is a very viable concept, and it's happened before, so why not now? Thrown out ballots, the fact that felons are not allowed to vote, millions, or something above 1 million people couldn't vote, including several 100,000 at least in Florida, which was a very close race. So, you'll have to excuse me if I'm a bit stuttery. It's been a long night. Cheers to that. I just flipped the page the wrong way. Here we go. This is This is unedited footage, guys. Enjoy. No script. This is what I look like without a script, and without a lot of sleep. So, now that we've properly doled out the blame, what do these numbers mean? Well, yes, we are a racist, sexist, and bigoted nation. If that was a surprise to anyone before last night, it can't be a surprise now. But what this also is indicative of is that people are really sick and tired of the status quo. People were unwilling to bite the bullet and vote for Clinton. Meanwhile, a lot of people were willing to bite the bullet and vote for Trump. Yes, a lot of his supporters are racists, are sexist, are white supremacists and bigoted people. Yes, you can't argue with that point. However, listen to these numbers regarding working class whites. In 2008, Obama won working class whites in Iowa, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Trump carried them. So, if those working class whites voted for a black president in 2008, is it because they've become racist in the past years? Or in the past 8 years? Or is it because they've seen what the status quo has brought them? That hope and change that in reality was more of the same. Could that be it? Worth thinking about. And of course, that idea that poor whites have consistently voted against their own interests predominantly for the past forever. But in reality, that would have been either way. You vote for Clinton, you get more of that elitism, 1%, corporate communism or corporate socialism. You vote for Trump and you get horrendous Republican values with some extra racism and sexism and bigotry sprinkled on top. And because our system refuses to accept the concept of anything outside the two-party system, a lot of people felt compelled to vote for the person who railed against the status quo, and that was Trump. It was also Bernie Sanders, but that shit is ancient history. And going back to the blame game, if you want to blame third-party voters, why not blame the people who wrote in Bernie Sanders? Or hell, the people who wrote in their mother? Because a lot of people were so disgusted with the whole thing that they either left it blank, a la the Bushes, or they just wrote in some ridiculous name. And even though Bernie Sanders said, "Don't write me in," a lot of people felt compelled to do so. And that raises the same point. People refused to vote for either a racist, sexist bigot or more of the same, a corrupt queen. And that is not on progressives, that is on the Democratic Party for feeling that it was more important to defeat Bernie than it was to defeat Trump. I'm switching back and forth between the blame game and what the numbers mean. Sorry if it's hard to follow. So yes, the numbers are indicative that this is not just about sexism and racism, although it is very much about that, and I don't want to downplay the importance of staring this problem squarely in the face. But it is also very much about the status quo and not wanting to fall in line behind a 1% darling. And all the pollsters and pundits and political experts and political darlings wanted to ram this through, and a lot of people said, fuck you. And I do not agree with the people who voted for Trump. I would rather have sawn off a leg than voted for Trump. But this is where we're at. We are a Republican nation. We are a racist, sexist, and bigoted nation, but we are also, we being the people, fucking sick of this bullshit. The Democratic Party doesn't just stand for more of the same, they stand for continuously more right-wing ideas, whether that be war hawking, whether that be fracking, GMOs. You have created a place where there is but one party. There's one party, and then there's this neo-fascist over here in La La Land that a lot of people felt that they were like, well, I know he's a racist, but not a good choice. But again, a lot of people felt compelled to make that choice. And this is where we're at in 2016. And a little word of caution here also regarding the numbers. It's very easy to dismiss the voters as just racist and sexist. And again, as I've said, a lot of them are. But dismissing these voters and their concerns is what got us here in the first place. I can't remember the name of the guest, but Amy Goodman had on a guest that had traveled around the country and talked to Trump supporters. And a lot of them had genuine concerns that a lot of people on the left have. A lot of progressives have these concerns. Indeed, she talked to one person in Louisiana who owned a farm or a ranch or something that an oil and gas project had completely decimated. And when the person asked this woman, well, this could have been stopped if the government had better regulation. The problem is that Louisiana's government is legitimately owned by big oil and gas, and the owner of this land pointed that out, and she said, what, more regulation from the oil and gas owned government? That's a fair point. Some of these people are assholes, yes, but some of these people have legitimate concerns and just made a wrong decision based on misinformation that was peddled by mainstream media and a two-party system that gives no shits about the people. All right, some good news. Some ballot initiatives, and what those mean. Virginia voted down this bullshit right to vote anti-union bill. Florida voted up medical marijuana, which they'll probably need. Massachusetts voted up legalizing marijuana. Maine voted up a raise in the minimum wage. Arkansas voted up medical marijuana constitutional amendment. Arizona, minimum wage hike. Colorado, minimum wage hike. Colorado, medical aid in dying. That might also come in handy. North Dakota, up medical marijuana. South Dakota, campaign finance overhaul. Montana, expanded medical marijuana. Nevada, expanded background checks. Nevada, up legalizing marijuana. California, firearm and ammo control, voted up. California, up legalized marijuana. Washington, up minimum wage. And yes, there were some downers, like the right to work in Alabama passed. Any execution method is okay in Oklahoma. No background checks in Maine. Colorado voted down state-sponsored health care. But this long list of good news from the states proves something else. That when it comes to specific issues, a lot of us are progressive. A lot of us want a higher minimum wage. A lot of us want medical marijuana and marijuana to be descheduled. A lot of us want, campaign finance reform. There is a lot of good news coming out of the states, regardless of whether they flipped to Republican or voted again for the Republicans. That has a lot to do with money, and it has a lot to do with misinformation and not educating ourselves. But what this shows is that there is progressivism alive in this country. There's progressivism alive on the local and state level, and we can keep pushing for that, and we can make a change on the local level, which I know I've said this before and I'll say it again, is actually far more important in your daily life than the federal government. And that's not to say that Trump isn't dangerous and that whoever ends up running the show for him, most likely Pence and friends, isn't fucking terrifying, but it does mean that you can make a change locally. It means that these ballot initiatives are indicative of a left that is still there. And the fact that we have fallen in line behind the Democrats or fallen off and just decided not to vote can change because of this. And that brings me to what now? A few months ago, I made sort of an offhand comment that proved not to be very offhand. I said that maybe what we need is a Trump victory, because people on the left will just be lulled to sleep by a Clinton victory, because it seems comfortable. It's what we've gotten used to. We've gotten used to this hope and change candidate that puts on the skin of a progressive and then just goes into the White House and does nothing progressive whatsoever. And then we just see ya, we're done. No need to stand on the barricades. But this is enough to get people to fucking wake up. It's a shock. I'm shocked. I couldn't fall asleep, I was so shocked. And that doesn't mean that I wasn't vying for Clinton, but holy shit. Again, everybody thought that she would win. People thought she'd win by a landslide. And this shock, although not pleasant, is what a lot of people need to wake the fuck up. to do something, to say, you know what, this is what the lesser of two evils has wrought. This is what the two-party system has wrought. This is what more of the same hope and change has wrought. And we gotta fucking do something about it. This could mark the end of the two-party system as we know it. This could mark the end of this apathetic disdain for politics. I'm not political. Yes, you are. Because the things that happen to you every day, from trash pickup to the bus you take to work, is politically managed. You are political, and your passive voice, that really is a vote for Trump. Not the third-party voters or the people, even the people who wrote in Bernie Sanders. It's the people who just sat there and were like, I don't know, whatever. Maybe this is enough to shock them into engagement. And that is exactly what we need. The only thing that stands between us and where we'd like to go as a country is us. Again, an educated populace, an engaged populace. That is the only thing that stands between us and what we have here. Trump is indicative of a lack of education. And I know that he won white college-educated males. Well, maybe it was just white college-educated people. Because yes, there were some women that voted for Trump. But this is also indicative of where our institutions are going, where our education system is going. There are legitimately people that have taken Jefferson out of their textbooks because he mentions the separation of church and state. This is what we have wrought. And to look at this and be shocked is okay, but to look at this and be surprised when you analyze the history, the recent history, you can't. So, what now? Yes, the Democrats have failed us, the Republicans have failed us, the two-party system has failed us. So, the only thing left to do is to fight. And again, this is a shock that many people needed. If you're already an activist, this will make you want to fight even more. I know that you want to despair and that you feel like, fuck this, I can't believe, this is a nightmare. It is a nightmare. It's a total fucking nightmare. We are Republican-owned. Governor, Senate, House, and White House. This is fucked. I'm not going to downplay that. But this is also a great opportunity to stand the fuck up. To get on the front lines and say no. That is the only thing that has ever saved us. And that is the only thing that could possibly make us great. Not again, but for the first time. That is the only thing that can make us great in the reality that we see, that we hope for, that real hope and change. So, forgive the slightly spazzy nature of this. Forgive the lack of fancy edits and all of that other shit. This is literally, when you're seeing this, this was done probably an hour before, and on little to no sleep, and with my trusty notepad. But this is real. This is me just coming to you pretty much live without a script and telling you not only what happened, but what we have to do now. So don't despair. Maybe have a drink if that's your thing, but then meet us on the front lines because we have a fuck ton of work to do. Racism, sexism, bigotry, but also just the systemic paradigm of our country needs a shit ton of work, and we are the only ones as citizens who can fix it. Don't take the privileged out of moving to a different country if you can. I know it's tempting to escape, but escaping is what led us here in the first place. Mental or physical, or both. So don't escape. Zero in on this, as uncomfortable as it is, because any psychiatrist will tell you the only way to fix your problems is to stare them down, and that's what we have to do. So, enough rambling from me. What you're going to see next is just a quick little mention about the upcoming actions with the TPP, and I would ask anybody, I give you this challenge. Today, sign up for an action. Somewhere, either locally. Again, what you're about to see is about the TPP, which we're having actions this coming week in DC. It's a great time for a road trip. Check it out and register for an action. Now is the time to fight. So, From tweets to marching in the streets, and from the Devil's Den, where it's just a mess of shit right now. Good morning, and act out. I've explained the TPP before, so in the interest of time, let me just explain it this way. Also this. You can find more details about how exactly the TPP is some fucked up imperialist bullshit, the crucifixion of liberty, over at Flush the TPP. But before you dive into details, mark your calendars for November 12th through 17th. Yes, this weekend. Starting this Saturday and through the following Friday, activists will converge on the Capitol to stand up to corporate power during the lame duck session. If you want some more insight into what the hell the lame duck session is, take a quick look at this segment from episode 83. And before you shut this off, tune out because your post-election hangover is just excruciating, and you're thinking, I can't right now. I get it. I too am apologizing to the logic and common sense sectors of my brain that have been battered by this election, but now is the time to activate. Now is the time to take whatever despair, whatever cynical distaste you have for this system and channel it. Because the TPP is your issue. And I can say that with full confidence because the TPP's overarching corruption affects literally every aspect of our lives. Access to medicine? Why, yes. The TPP pushes for longer monopolies on drugs under more stringent intellectual property protections, which would not only hinder access to, but also raise the price of life-saving medicines. $2,000 EpiPen, anyone? How about job security? Anyone worried about that? Probably would be, considering this economy. Well, the TPP would cause a net job loss of about 448,000 jobs, and the U.S. economy would shrink by about $100 billion. Kind of makes you wonder why it's even up for consideration, right? Well, because corporations stand to gain a veritable fuck-ton due to the agreement. Not only do they get to keep the cash gained from shipping jobs overseas to actual slave labor factories a la Malaysia, but they get to sue the shit out of anyone who would hinder their destruction of people and planet in the name of profit. Indeed, the ISDS, or Investor-State Dispute Settlement, is basically a blank check written to any corporation that seeks profit in the land of the free trade agreement. For example, let's say that you've worked really hard on banning fracking in your community, and legislation finally passes to outlaw the dirty practice. Well, under the TPP, and in fact we've seen this already with corporate courts spawned by NAFTA, under these trade agreements, corporations can sue for potential profits lost due to your fucking whining about water and air and stuff. And again, this isn't just some hypothetical evil. We've already seen it. And in fact, we have been seeing it for decades. Right here in DC, the International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes, or ICSID, has administered more than 550 cases and prides itself on its, quote, availability to investors and states, which helps to promote international investment by providing confidence in the dispute resolution process. What that translates to is, we help fuck over people and planet so that investors feel confident in making ass buckets of cash through a capitalistic destructive process whose only end game is sovereignty over a golden graveyard. But I guess they might have thought that was too wordy to include in their About section. You can see this process in action by scrolling through their list of cases conveniently organized by corporation versus sovereign nation, including, by the way, the good old US of A, which is currently in a pending case against TransCanada regarding that pesky portion of pipeline that was vetoed earlier this year. Suit made possible by NAFTA. And now, as the deal known as NAFTA on steroids looms in the lame duck session, the stakes couldn't be higher for anyone who values any of the following: air, water, food, health, education, human rights, civil rights, digital rights, income equality, corporate accountability, and more. So yes, this is your fight. This is my fight. It's our fight. The ICSID list gives you literally hundreds of reasons to get your ass to DC and take a stand. Register at the link below, show up for as many days as you can, lodging is available, and actions will take place from the 14th through the 17th. Now, outside of DC, there is work you can do in your own communities, including working to make them a TPP-free zone, but I will stress the importance again of showing up here in DC. There are a few things that can really beat a tremendous show of people power in the face of corporate power, and that is exactly what we need to beat the TPP. So check out flushthetpp.org to get more info on the TPP and to register to come to DC next week. There are carpooling options, and November is a great time for a little road trip. You can also check out the event pages via Flush the TPP's Facebook page, aptly at Facebook/FlushTheTPP. And with this last thought, we'll wrap up this week's Dose of Dissent. For those of you woke enough not to be hungover from celebrating, but hungover more from nursing a corporate, hegemonic hangover, I feel you. As the saying goes, stay woke. Don't take this time to shudder inside. Don't fly from the front lines in search of a place where you're safe from this beast, because there is none. There are glimmers in the cracks of capitalism's impending death, and it's up to us how it goes out, and what we build now matters. It matters right now. So please share this with your friends, foes, and people you don't know. Come out to DC. Organize, 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 and rise. As always, check out the last slide to see the sites mentioned in this week's show. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. From the Devil's Den and the lame duck duopoly, good night and act out. And real quick, to keep independent, non-corporatized media like this show going, donate at Occupy.com/donate. If you'd like to donate directly to Act Out, visit Patreon.com/actout.